It's fine though. I love them. They're the best. I do. Yeah. The scene. Oh, okay. You live in, wait, I'm sorry. You should do that. I will refer you. Really? No, yes, I get a bonus if I refer you. Yeah. So, yeah, and the already like that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, good morning.
Sorry, folks, 16 seconds. I got twice in 1 week. Nice to see you all.
Just let me. Most of you turned in your homework assignment, so I saw a bunch of you turn that in. If you haven't turned in the homework assignment, or even haven't done it, you don't have to admit that to me, but if you haven't done it or you haven't turned it in, you can still do that. You will lose a few points every day that you don't turn it in, but you can still turn it in for up to half credit all the way the rest of the time. So if you didn't do it and you regret it, you can still do that. I'll be grading those probably over the rest of the week, and you'll see those scores up. They'll just kind of populate as I go through them. Yeah.
So like 2-3 pages, that was like a minimum.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If you have more that you can always give me more. I will never take off for giving me too much, but if you're well short of that, you probably didn't go into it. But yeah, you can always give me more if you have it. 100 pages. That's a lot, but I'll still read it. But all right. So I want to. So we have a little left of chapter 7, but I think we had a really kind of fun, wonderful conversation last time. So thank you again for everyone who chimed in and had things to say. I wanted to share something with you too. I was sharing this with somebody after class. So we're focusing on gendered communication, but there's a really cool book, right, that I want to share with you. If you're really interested in this topic, I just pulled it up on Amazon. It was just the easiest place to find it. It's called How We Love. And it's more about attachment style than gender, but it's super connected to what we're talking about, right? A lot of relationships have communicational issues that are not only based on gender, but they might be based on something broader, like the attachment style you have with a child. That's a little beyond, sort of beyond what we're talking about in here, but it very directly connects to love styles, which we'll talk about in chapter 7. This book is an incredibly popular book, and the fun thing about it is it has all these links to tests that you can take with a partner, like online, to find out your attachment style. And so, like, for example, if you have one style of attachment and relating to the world, and your partner has a different style of attachment and relating to the world, that can cause communicational issues in a relationship. And this book goes through introducing these styles, and then what it does after that is talk about how you can negotiate those differences. So really interesting. It's a little beyond gender, but it's definitely connected to what we're talking about. It's a very easy read too. They are a little bit religious. It's like a married couple, and there's a little bit of a lens of religion, but it's not in any way oppressive in the book or anything. But just to put that out there. But I do think it's interesting. So I thought I would put it up here in case you wanted to read something more. And again, it's not so much gender, but more like attachment. Yeah, you ordered it. It is a great book, right? I was going to bring mine to pass around, and then I realized I wrote a ton of notes in it. And I'm like, that might not be appropriate to pass around to all of you. I wrote all these notes about my relationship in there. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't pass that around. But I mean, not that I haven't shared probably more than I should about my relationship anyway. But yeah, I think it's a really cool, easy read, and the tests that come with it are fun. We tend to take little tests, right? I have one for you later too, a love quiz to take later, something to look forward to. So I want to go back to this for just a minute. I just didn't want to forget to suggest that. We talked a lot about men, right, and male communication patterns. We talked a little bit about women who ran out of time. So I want to start there again. And I had an interesting moment that reminded me of this, and I'll share it with you and then we can go from there. It was Tuesday night, so last night, that was like so long ago, last night, we were going out to dinner, right? And we had this like very common, like we have this every now and then. I looked at my partner, right, who's female, and I said, where do you want to go to dinner tonight?
Oh my God.
This is my least favorite question to ask in life. Okay, so I love food. You know I love food, right? I will eat pretty much anywhere. Even if I don't like a restaurant, I can find something, right? But I asked my partner, I'm like, where do you want to go to dinner? She's like, anywhere is fine. Cool. Okay. How about pizza? That doesn't sound so great. I'm like, okay. How about like Mexican food? We could go to Don Cuco's. No, we went there like a few months ago. I'm not sure I want to go there. I'm like, okay. How about like TGIF? He's like, no. 7 options later. After like 10 minutes of this, like me proposing and her saying no, me proposing and her saying no, I was like, what sounds good to you for dinner? Like, and it just made me laugh and think of this, of that like women tend to not always say what they mean is a very common thing. My partner is very non-game planning, except for when it comes to meals, right? Like with dinner, like just tell me what you want because I'll eat anywhere. And ultimately, we let the kids decide, which was not the best because we ended up at McDonald's, right? See, stay at McDonald's, but interesting. I was just thinking about that with this class. Like we always have that moment of like, where do you want to go? Anywhere is fine. Is it though? Is it really not apparent? Right? So that's another one I think we could add. We were talking about that a little bit of not always saying what you mean. We mentioned, saying I'm fine. Did anyone have any other ones for like how women communicate or like kind of stereotypical female communication stuff at all? Thinking back, I know you have to think back to Monday. Yeah. Oh, okay. Right. I saw a TikTok yesterday and the guy was like, I thought I won that fight. And 3 years later, she brought it up. Like, like kind of holding on to it. Like, are you mad now? And then, but it's kind of keeping that grudge, right? Yeah.
I'm just remembered, or not remembered, but realized like when a lot of like cis women, I'll say, like are upset, like they'll say that they're not, but you can like totally like it's so easy to tell like body language, like face, everything, and then they're like, no, I'm not, like totally. So I don't know. I think that's a good thing too. Like it's so easy to tell, like in like literally within your face. Like I'm like that. So
nonverbal stuff, right? You can easily tell when somebody's mad, but they're like, no, I'm fine. Fine again, right? No, I'm not mad, right?
Like they'll like have a super high pitched voice.
No, not at all. Fake smile. Right? I'm planning your death right now, but I'm not.
From a place of like men sometimes just don't listen, so why bother telling them?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a common one, right? That men don't listen as much. Women have that, like, what's the point of talking to you if you're not going to listen or understand? Anything else you can think of? Yeah.
Can I say like something against it?
Of course.
The only thing I would say against it is the benefit of being biased. Because I can agree with you 100%, but I feel like we might be biased to like, was that gender or something, you know what I mean? Like we're not understanding where they're coming from.
Yeah, I wouldn't say those.
Yeah, that's good. So it like depends.
Of course, right? I go back and
I feel like most of the time women are better at picking up on the nonverbal cues than men, but they're still expecting like their husband or boyfriend to be able to pick up on it, and they just don't have that ability.
Sure.
And
then they get when they don't.
when you don't pick
Maybe
up on
you
it.
felt right.
I didn't tell you, but I'm mad at you. It's like that. I'd say like with the Christmas present, right? But yeah, I think women stereotypically are better at picking up those little nuances, right? Of like, did you see that they were fighting? Wait, what? What are you talking about? Right? Like kind of differences in what you notice and pick up on. Yeah.
I've also noticed that, I mean, at least in my experience, when like, let's say you are acting kind of like you are upset, the man asks you, are you okay? And you say, I'm fine. The man will take you at your word.
Yeah.
Like they'll either, you are upset and you just not gotta talk about it, or you actually are fine and there's some other reason, like, that's the thing, like, or at least in my experience, maybe that's just what I've, been led to think that's, stuff, but, they'll just be, I also think that that's a matter of like asking you, okay, like, do you want to talk about it, like, this is a lot of
Yeah.
time. I don't know, at least men prefer not to talk about things when they're upset, or like, blah, 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 but. Yeah, so it's not, sometimes maybe not even notice, or like, if they ask you to say you're fine, is that.
Taking you at your word.
Yeah, then that's kind of on you.
Right, and some people are way more literal, like if you say I'm fine, like, okay, you're fine, great, moving on, right? And so, again, whether that's gendered or personality is up for debate, but that's a very common one that we see. Yeah, you had your hand up again, yep.
What was he saying? It was like from a girl's perspective on like why I think we. Oh my gosh. Come back.
All right, if it comes back to you, right, it's hard, right, it's Wednesday, it's a rough day. I keep wishing people a happy weekend, like yesterday, I was like, have a good weekend, it's Tuesday, no, I was wrong, so wrong, yeah. What's my advice? Oh geez, that's a big question, right? I mean, I think that it takes, the biggest thing I think that I always keep in mind is it takes work, right? It takes both people for communication to work, and it's not one-sided, right? And so, like I shared with you all last time, it took my partner and I years to really learn to communicate with each other effectively. And that's not all the time. Like the second we start to fight, like that goes out the window, right? Like when you're not thinking clearly, you don't communicate clearly either half the time. And so I think just remembering that it takes work and that, conflict isn't a bad thing, right? We tend to think of conflict as bad. Right? I think a lot of people think of it as a negative thing, but it means that you care enough to fight about it in a way. If you don't ever fight, if you don't ever have disagreements, that's kind of problematic too. So I think remembering those things, that it's going to take work, it's going to take both of you, it's going to take time, and that conflict sometimes can lead to a better outcome, right, in the end. Yeah.
I was gonna say, oh, man, okay. Kind of shows that you care. So you keep
Sure.
being like, are you sure?
Hmm.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To a point though, right?
Yeah, to a point. That's the point twice, you know what I mean? Maybe not once because you can tell you're upset with them, or like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You give her space at first. And
Sure.
then-
I do, right? Although I laughed in my head when you said that, I'm like, to a point, because sometimes my partner will be like, oh, I'm fine, then I'll ask again. And I'll ask again, because I can tell, right? Like you were saying, like you could tell when somebody's mad.
Yeah.
I'm like, I know you're mad. Why are you mad? What's wrong? Are you okay? She's like, I told you I'm fine. I'm like, but you're not, and I know you're not, right? Like, fine, I'll back off for like 20 minutes. Because they're to a point. Shows you care, but then they might not be ready to think about it. There was another, yeah.
There's also this like thing about women's communication with each other being very like subtle and weird,
Mhm.
and especially when it comes to animosity,
Okay,
like there's this like pretending to be nice to each other thing
sure.
that happens
Between women.
between women,
Mhm.
it's like to be nice to each other thing. And then there'll be just like the occasional jab.
Mhm.
Like I was moving out of my dorm back when I was in college in Florida,
Mhm.
and like this roommate who I was convinced absolutely hated me, and she, like looked me in the eye and was like I was doing something possibly annoying to her, and she was like, so when are you moving out?
Like now, right? No, let's go, right? Yeah, okay, like those subtle, like the subtlety of it. Mhm.
This like friend, you could see it, that oftentimes, it's even more about gender than sex, where like this happens a lot with transgender people will follow the same, like will sometimes follow like the same types of patterns
Mhm.
that aren't associated with their sex, but with their gender.
Yeah, and your communication style doesn't have to match your sex, right? Or your gender, or be one or the other. Like a lot of you, I imagine as we're talking about this, you're like, I kind of do both, right? Like, I mean, a lot of us probably do a little bit of everything. And like I was talking about with that book, some of that is your attachment style, and some of that is your gender, and some of it's your personality. Could be generational. There are huge generational differences in the way we communicate as well. Yeah.
that kind of her story brought me back to something where I was just asking a question, like a literal question, and I was asking my coworker like when she was off, and she's like, "What? Do you want me to leave or something?" And I was like, "I'm just asking like when you're off."
When your shift is over,
Yeah,
right?
and, like,
Yeah.
She took it so like personal, and I was like, "Sorry."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a common one of like women maybe taking things more personally. Yeah, right. And that again, personality or gender could be either. I have a little clip talking to women. So I played one for talking to men. This one's much shorter, but I think it's funny. It's a good example anyway. So it's from a 40-year-old virgin. Conversation ever. No. It's like I mean definitely awkward, right? But I think just kind of going off of that stereotype of like how you talk to women, what women want according to these guys anyway. And so just a very like big part of this chapter, right? Obviously we're dealing in stereotypes, but they're true a lot of the time, even if it's not necessarily that the gender and sex match up. So many fun movies related to this between the two clips and then that little part of Wednesday. A little bit more, a couple of other things related to communication. There's just a couple more slides here. There's something called the onion theory of communication. I always think of Donkey from Shrek, where you have to reveal yourself in onion layers. Yeah, right. So with this, when you first meet someone, right, what we tend to do is reveal information about ourselves in layers, right? We start with the surface and then we move inward, right? If you reveal too much too quickly, it's awkward and uncomfortable. If you don't reveal enough, people might not feel like you trust them or you have any intimacy developing. So this is kind of like a fine line. I forget the movie. I think it was a Baby Mama. At the beginning of the movie, there's a scene where she just like tells this guy on a first date, like her whole life goals that she wants to have children, all this stuff. And he gets up and runs out, right? Because it was too much, too fast, right? And that's the idea with this theory, is that it's important to reveal stuff and kind of develop layers, but too much, too fast. Or not enough can also be a little bit. You discuss yourself, somebody's sexual history, right? About a partner, like just the thought of it is like enough to feel like it's like cringeworthy, like you don't want to hear it, right? But it's important. Otherwise, you're just going off of guesswork, right? You're going off of what you think they might like or what you liked in a previous relationship, and you don't know what they like. If you want to be successful in your relationship and with physical intimacy, you have to talk about it, right? And then have empathy for each other, right? Oh, okay, if that's something that you really want and really like, I want to find a way to do that for you. Where was I just watching? Oh, I don't know if any of you watched that show. Like the next episode, is it tomorrow? I'm like, I'm ready. I'm like waiting anxiously. But there was a whole episode recently. One of the guys in there had a fetish for something called golden showers. It's been urinated on, sometimes called water sports. Next time somebody asks you if you like water sports, clarify before you answer. But it is, you knew that already, right? So interesting with that, like he never tells her, and it's something that he hides from her and is engaging with other people, and then them trying to have a conversation about it, right? So there's an important piece of like having that empathy, having a conversation with people, learning to make requests, being able to say no, right? Avoid sending mixed messages. So self-disclosure in a relationship, whether it's your past and your preferences or like related to intimacy, is really important, especially if you want to avoid like common pitfalls. I have a cool clip of this too. If you've seen the movie I Love You, Man, there's a very awkward like toast conversation where this comes up, and then it leads to a conversation in the car on the way home. But it's a great example of how not talking about something can be problematic. And just by talking about it, it can change things in a relationship. So let me play this. So she's going off of her past relationship, right? Her previous partner didn't enjoy having that done, so she assumed he didn't enjoy that, right? And and it comes up awkwardly, but now that they've talked about it, there's an awareness there, and that will change things for them, right? So I think it's really important to have those conversations, even though they're awkward. His grimace, the way he looks when she's talking about like her ex, is such a common like feeling. That's like the feeling that most people have. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to think about it. Just completely like almost disgusted by it. But it's important at the same time. It's important to have some awareness of that. What if somebody has like a trauma in their past? That's something that you might want to know about so you can be sensitive to it, right? Especially if it's a sexual trauma that might affect their intimacy, right? So these are things that are important to talk about. You want to not do too much too quickly, right? You want to kind of do this in layers. But having that ability to have those conversations is important, especially for like a successful relationship. One last thing, unsuccessful communication patterns, right? I love the picture on the bottom. It looks like she's going to eat him, right? So there are two psychologists named John Gottman and his wife, Gottman and Gottman, they're often referred to. And these two are very famous couples therapists, very, very prominent in the field of therapy when it relates to couples. And so what these two have done is they came up with something that they called the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? They're kind of relating them to the 4 horsemen. It's that, that metaphor for like the end of days, right? That we get from the Bible. But what they said is that if a couple shows these 4 unsuccessful communication patterns, they can predict with like 95% certainty whether or not they will break up or not, right? These are things that tend to be huge red flags if they're not addressed. So if you have one of these or some of these in a relationship, it doesn't mean you're doomed, but it does mean you probably need to address them to avoid it becoming a bigger problem. So from their perspective, and this is very well like documented and researched, if you have a lot of criticism, contempt, defensiveness, or stonewalling in a relationship, you tend to be on like an unhealthy path that might require either therapy or just change in some way. So criticism is when you attack your partner's like personality or character. It's a lot of like, you never do this. You always do this, like globalizing things and attacking them rather than like, you didn't do this today. It's like, you never care about me. You never show this, right? Like very much making it like a much bigger thing than maybe the moment. So you're trying to prove that like you're right and they're wrong. Contempt is when you have like insults, you insult them or you intend to do them harm in some way. So whether that's body language, like eye rolling or like sneering or like any kind of like verbal insult that you might get, right? The eye rolling is thought to be one of the more negative like patterns, right? So something to try and avoid. Defensiveness, when you see yourself as the victim. This can lead to problems, and this is another very common communication issue. Somebody brings up a problem, and rather than hearing them, you get defensive, or you turn it back around on them, right? Of like, I wish that you would do X. Well, you never do Y, right? Like, and then it becomes a fight, right? Rather than like listening to them and trying to validate that. Stonewalling is when you withdraw from a conflict, right? So you just kind of remove yourself, you shut yourself off. This is different than needing space. Right? Like if you need a few minutes of space to like calm down or to think of what you want to say, that's different. This is somebody who like refuses to talk about it. Like, I don't want to talk about it, just completely like a wall, right? And that can be harmful because then one person is refusing to engage in any kind of conversation to fix things or work through them. So these, according to them, are very negative patterns that need to be addressed if you're going to avoid the end of days, right? Or the end of times, the end of a relationship. So trying to avoid these is good. And again, if you have some of these in your relationship, like you roll your eyes every now and then, or like you are guilty of saying some of those things, it doesn't mean you're doomed. It just means that they're not the most healthy patterns to have. Any other like thoughts, comments, anything else related to communication? I mean, we've had lots of like conversation about it, but anything else related to this or anything in this chapter before we move on? And again, I recommended that book. I know a few of you came in late. I can put it up at the end, but I think this is a really cool like relationship book. They're talking about marriage, but it's for any relationship. So I'll put that up at the end for if you want to take a picture of it or anything. But otherwise, we'll move on to kind of a related topic. We'll move on to chapter 7, which is about love and different types of love and falling in love and the elements of love. This big. So we'll look at different types of love, right? There's a lot of different theories and proposed types. A lot of chemical things that relate to falling in love. We'll talk about that a little bit. Issues in relationships as well, like who we fall in love with and why. I found a bunch of images of people who like looked like they were in love. This was a much less dangerous Google search than like anatomy, I will say. So lots of different things. Love is something that's different from person to person, right? right? We all express it differently. There are a ton of different types of love, which we'll talk about. I found a little like falling in love movie montage. I think we should like get into the spirit of it, right? So I'm going to play it for you. It's pretty recent. It's got a lot of different movies that are highlighted in there. I'll play it for you. It's just kind of fun. It makes me want to watch Star Wars every time. There's like a little Star Wars clip. That's my takeaway. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go watch Star Wars. Anyway. All right, here we go.
Don't you think that life should be gay and bright and bubbly like champagne?
Like nice representation, which I like. So again, we'll talk about different types of love, but just to set the tone. Let's see. All right. So again, love is something that is very different from person to person. It is incredibly difficult to define, right? It is something that doesn't have a universal definition. This is the best one that we have. Ready? It's a special attitude. So that's our start, right? A special attitude with behavioral and emotional components. That doesn't capture it at all, right? That's not even good at all. But that is something that we tend to use as kind of a rough definition, right? And this means very different things to different people. It's difficult to measure. How do you operationalize love? For some people, love is more of like an action. For others, it might be things that you say. For others, it's completely different, right? It's all over the map. And so what we'll do is we'll talk about a bunch of different types of love. There's a lot of theories related to this about how we can like categorize different types, but it's all like within one huge realm, right? Like all of them together. There are still more, right, than what we'll talk about here. But one of the most basic kind of distinctions that we sometimes make when we're talking about romantic love or love between partners is romantic and passionate love versus companionate or conjugal love. Now, this is probably like, as I said, the most basic distinction. Romantic or passionate love, we sometimes call infatuation, right? So instead of love at first sight, it's more like infatuation at first sight, right? And that's kind of what we're getting at with this first one. There's a lot of very intense feelings, a lot of desire. There's no conflict yet. It's very, very short-lived. Like you find somebody that you're attracted to, and you might just be absolutely taken by them, like right off the bat, right? And a lot of that is infatuation. A lot of that's actually chemical, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But in the beginning, you tend to have a lot of passion, a lot of like desire, a lot of craving for another person. And that tends to fade. It actually tends to fade right around like the 3 to 7 month mark, which is why a lot of couples break up in the 3 to 7 month range, because this starts to taper off chemically. And people are like, oh, we no longer love each other. We're falling out of love. People have their first fight because it's starting to get a little bit more real. And then all of a sudden you have to make a choice. Am I going to let it transition to this, or am I going to stay here, or am I going to end the relationship? So passionate or romantic love tends to be very short-lived. Our body cannot keep producing the hormones and neurotransmitters at that same amount. And so it doesn't last. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have romance and passion in a long-term relationship. You need to find ways to keep those things. But relationships that last transition to a companionate or conjugal love. Love that is maybe a little less like physiologically intense, but it has a deep attachment component to it. You have a familiarity and an acceptance and a tolerance for somebody's shortcomings. You love them for who they are, right? Despite their issues, despite the things that are maybe, that they fall short on, you love them anyway, right? And you find ways to accept and love them. It's more enduring. It tends to be something that lasts. So in order for a relationship to last, it has to transition from one to the other. And sometimes when people are in that transitional phase, they end up breaking up because it feels different, right? And so again, we'll talk about some ways you can kind of keep some of the initial stuff like alive, but this is a very common distinction, right? Is it short-term, like very passionate, very physical, or is it something that's more long-lasting and more like deep love and attachment and commitment? Another very popular theory is the triangular theory. This is Sternberg's triangular theory of love. We add another layer. So according to Sternberg, we have passion, intimacy, and commitment. 3 elements that are involved in loving someone. And what happens if we take these 3 things, is you can look at how each one of them can kind of combine together to create different types of love. So if you have all 3, you'd be in the middle. and you have what he called consummate love. Someone who has intimacy, passion, and commitment. That's like the gold standard of love in the middle. If you have infatuation alone, it'd be passion. Empty love would just be commitment, right? Liking somebody, like maybe a friend or like or something like that, would just be looking only at the intimacy. Intimacy here meaning more like emotional closeness. So according to Sternberg, we have this passion that starts out strong and then fades. And intimacy and commitment are things that are going to continue to build. And the goal would be that we get consummate love in the middle, but there's a lot of other types of love. Sometimes people stay together despite not really loving each other anymore. There's no more passion. And you would again call that empty love, right? Or maybe you really care for someone, but you don't have like a romantic desire for them. Like you can love a friend, you can love a friend dearly, right? You might love a sibling, a parent, right? So we start to get other types of love beyond just like a romantic, passionate love for another person. So again, very common theory, 3 elements, passion, intimacy, and commitment that can exist in different combinations to yield different types of love. Any thoughts or comments, questions, anything before we go to there's one more like theory that I have a quiz with that I'm excited to give you because I think it's fun to take, but anything so far? Yeah.
I feel like when like loving someone gets, and it's like non-romantic, I feel like there's a really big difference between like being in love and loving someone. Because
Sure.
you can like, I don't know.
It's a common distinction, right? I'm in love with you versus I love you.
Yeah.
Can mean very different things to different people too, right? And sometimes you have someone who you're friends with and you love them and it can transition to being in love with them, or it could go the other way, right? That you're with somebody and you fall out of love with them. I like that. So the other theory to mention is one called the colors of love, proposed by someone named John Allen Lee. And I have a little quiz. So I put this together. This isn't an official quiz, but I think it works really well. I kind of gathered it and put it together in a way where it's meaningful. Don't start this yet. Let me hand these out to you. And then I'll tell you, I'm going to give you a couple of guidelines for how to take it here.
How was it?
Let's see what you get. So again, don't start yet. I'm going to give you just a couple of directions for. All right, everybody go? You're not traumatized by it.
I know, like shake.
I don't need to go my bundle. Okay.
This is.
Oh, that's right. Okay. I had it
Together.
Okay, so what I want you to do, you need to make a choice for this quiz. So let me just give you a little bit of information. When you're taking this, you need to either think about this in one of a couple of ways. Otherwise, it's going to be a little bit hard to interpret. So you could think about how you tend to be in general, right? Like, so how you tend to be like across relationships or just in general. You could think about a relationship that you're in right now and have that be like your guide as you go through this. You could think about your ideal. Let's say you're not in a relationship or maybe you haven't had one. You could think about what you would want as an ideal, but you have to pick one of those. So like for me, like as I'm taking this, I would probably think about my current relationship, right? And then I would answer them related to that. And you can go with the ideal, you can go with current, you can go with past, any of those, or kind of in general. Just pick one and stay consistent all the way through. So all you're going to do is go through these and using the little scale at the top, you either 5 would be strongly agree, 4 moderately agree, 3 you're kind of like in the middle, right? 2 would be moderately disagree, and 1 would be strongly disagree. So you're going to read each statement and give it a number score. And then I want you to add up your score for each type of love. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes, what it means, but I'll give you a little bit of time to do that. And again, I'm not collecting these, so be honest, right? And think about one of those perspectives, and then we'll go from there. And then make sure you add up your score for each section, right? There's that little gray highlight. Add up your score for each one when you're done. We have a couple more minutes, a lot of people think we're still going. Then we can talk about what it means and all. Just like another minute or so, some of you look done, so about another minute and we'll talk. All right, if you're not quite done adding, you can keep adding. That's totally fine. You're gonna keep this. Again, I'm not collecting it. And there's a little description on here of each one. And then a couple of words up here for each one. But basically, in terms of scoring, the higher your score, the more like you that type would be. The lower your score, the less like you that type would be, right? So 35 would be the highest you could get. So the closer you are to 35, the more like you that would be. And 7 would be the minimum. So the lower the score, the less like you. So out of curiosity, how many of you have like one like obvious love type, just by show of hands? Right? Quite a few of you. How many of you have like 2 or more that are pretty close? A lot of you. So I have 3 that are like the exact same. Eros, mania, and agape. So I'm romantic, crazy, but selfless. Maybe that's my redeeming quality. I'm selfless, but romantic and crazy. So hopefully as you were going through this, you could kind of see how you had to pick one of those stances, right? Like if you think of a relationship you're in now, it might be a little bit different than if you think about your ideal. It might be different than if you think about like a past relationship that maybe like ended or wasn't successful. I don't know, any comments? Does it seem like you, or do you agree? Do you disagree? Like, what do you think? Yeah.
And I got it on 3 of them.
Okay, so you have three that are like not very much like you, right?
Same.
Yeah.
Wait, yeah, I got 313.
Yeah. So
and
those
I
three
got-
would be not very strong love styles for you.
And I got 21 on the fight.
And then did you have one that was like way higher?
That one.
That was your highest? Yeah, so that would be your most like strongest love style. I'll go back there and then come over, yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think most of us kind of have an idea of the way that we love, but it can be
I'm
different.
terrified.
Oh, no, it could be different from partner to partner, right? Like, so what's interesting is you might be one way with one partner. And you might be a little bit different with somebody else. Or like, I've taken this test for like 15 years at this point. My scores keep changing, right? Because we've been together a long time. And so some of the things like, some of my scores have gone up and some of them have gone down, right? Just over time, it can change as well. Yeah.
Just some of the questions, like I try to keep my partner a little uncertain about my commitment.
So the Rudolphs.
Yeah.
So can you see here, as you're taking this, right, so that question, that's a great one right there. Like, let's say you have somebody who is a practical lover, right? They are a pragmatic, practical lover. And you have somebody who is a game playing lover. Are they gonna be successful? They're gonna have problems. That doesn't mean they can't be successful, but we tend to do better with people who have similar love styles to us. So like for me, my Ludo score is 7. Right, like that's as low as it can be. I'm not a game player, I'm like very straightforward, but some people enjoy the game of luck. Like some people are that way and they tend to do better with other people who are into the game of luck. They would go like, yeah, it's the pursuit, the chase, the like, I can have you if I want you and like, and so some people love that, right? I'm glad that you mentioned that, that's a good one. Yeah. Did you ever, yeah. Story. Yeah. Yeah.
Like the second one is like, oh, if the partner and I break up, I would get sort of that, but I would be in control. I was like, okay, like, no, but I don't do that.
Oh. Fine. So it'd be interesting to say, and I want to ask you, like, if you're in a relationship, you don't have to disclose it, but if you aren't, and these are your ideals, one day, if you are in a relationship, do they match your ideals? Like, just interesting to think about, because we all tend to have an idea of what we would like, and it doesn't always end up being what we actually like, which is interesting, right? So, but I'm glad you said that. This is super informal. If you're like, I disagree, that's fine, right? That's totally fine. If it like absolutely fits you, right? But I just think it's interesting to think about. And again, we tend to do better with people who are at least in the wheelhouse of where you, right? They don't have to be the same. It's, you don't want to love a clone of yourself, or most people don't, but similar tends to be important with like lasting relationships. Yeah.
I thought that the private section.
Yeah.
Because that's how some people look at like relationships. They look for, like,
Yeah.
that's perfect. It's like
Right.
candidate.
Yeah, right. And so for me, the pragma section, like, I didn't think about those things when I met my partner. I wasn't like, is your job gonna reflect well on me? No, but my partner had a really high score on her pragma. She like thought about, would I be a good parent? Like when we were entering in a relationship, and like, good for you for being so practical. I was just like, I love you. Like, right? Yeah. And so it's really interesting how like, it's very obvious when it's not your style. Or it's very obvious when it is your style. And then there's often some in the middle where like it could go back and forth depending on who you're with. Any other thoughts? There's a lot of like, any other comments? Yeah.
I have like 4 love styles.
Okay.
And I did it with my like,
Let's try and keep it down so we can hear
I
you.
did it with like my ideal
Okay.
relationship, because I don't know, I was gonna do it on like my past month and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so 4 of them, right? So like, that might mean that you're very flexible in your lifestyle, right? If you have multiple styles that are high, then you maybe have a little more flexibility in the way that you love, or it might be very like partner based.
Yeah.
Right, we tend to bring out different sides of ourselves with different people, even friends, right? Like you probably all have friends, you're different with some than with others, right? They bring out different sides of you. Really interesting, and I'm always hesitant to suggest this because once it backfired, but I'm gonna put it out there in the world anyway, with like 15 caveats, right? So a couple of years ago, I mentioned like if you want to take one of these and give it to your partner, I have extras. The next class, I asked, did anyone, because a bunch of people took one. The next class was like, did anyone do this? Like, and one came in and they're like, we broke up because of this quiz. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's like, in all fairness, she was all like, it was coming. Like, anyway, like this was just the catalyst. So I'm always a little hesitant. So, but if you want to, you're right, there was obviously a lot there. It wasn't the quiz that broke them, right? Like, or at least that's what I tell myself, right? So if you're interested, I have a bunch of extras of these, but you have to be open to what your partner says. Sometimes these things can become a little bit of a trap, right? Like, I'll be honest with you, as I was filling this out afterward, I was like, I'm gonna like hide it, burn it. Like, I mean, in fairness, I wouldn't really care that much, but some of the questions, like why'd you put 3? I don't want to explain that, right? So like, I'm not going to share my responses per se with my partner, but you could see what their scores are. It could be kind of an interesting conversation starter, but only if you're open to what they actually feel and have to say. If you know that it's going to be a problem, don't take it, right? Just don't. But it's interesting because, as I said, we tend to do better with people who are similar. My partner, her score was the highest on these two. Like selfish, no, that's a bad Freudian slip. I'm not gonna do that. Selfless and practical, right? My partner is very selfless, very practical. I'm like mania and crazy, but also selfless, right? So, but it's interesting. You don't have to be the same. But again, I think it's kind of an interesting conversation starter. And if you're not in a relationship, but you answered with ideals, you know, if you ever are in a relationship later, you know, are you where your ideals are? And does that matter or not? Just interesting things to think about. Yeah.
Considering that when your partner left, you got in your car and
Yep.
followed her.
Yeah. That's nice. That's who I am though, as a person, right? I am devoted for better or worse, right? Like I don't give up on people like ever, right? Yeah, and again, some of that is like attachment style, right? Like it's your attachment style, it's your love style, it's your gender, it's your personality. It all comes together, right? And like ideally, when you find somebody who is similar, like if you're a jealous person, but you're not going to do well with somebody who isn't like also kind of similar, right? If you have a very possessive partner, right, and you tend to flirt with everyone, problem, right? Like, so when we get like similar styles, we tend to do a little bit better. Yeah. No, like, yeah, in 19 years, I've never once knock on something. I've never once slept on the couch in 19 years. I'm like, right? Like, yeah. Right, yeah, I think their skills, it's a therapist background. I can validate really well, right? I mess up, but I repair well. That's my life goal, right? So hold on to this, and if you want, I have more, but please keep that in mind if you take one. Don't blame me if it causes a fight, right? There's so many of these fun books that you can get as couples, like where you ask each other questions and it's like conversation starters. But are you really open to the answers? You have to ask yourself, you have to know that about yourself before you give it to someone, right? So hold on to that. It is yours, or destroy it maliciously like I plan to do. I'm going to tuck this somewhere. No, I'm just kidding. Chili. I love him.
The first date. People on their first date.
First date. Are you two really compatible? Let's find out right now. Oh my gosh. Nothing. Let's talk a little bit about this. Chemistry. The chemistry of love. This is something that is massive, and I think it's something that a lot of people. Ready? I'm gonna keep going. Something that a lot of people don't, I think, recognize the importance of. There are a lot of chemicals involved in love. at least initially, right? And as I mentioned a little bit ago, when these things taper off, people can misinterpret that as like our relationship is dying or we're out of love with each other. It's more just that your body cannot keep producing them. Whenever you take a drug of any kind, even something like as mild as caffeine, your body becomes tolerant to it, right? If you drink 1 cup of coffee every single day, eventually that cup of coffee doesn't really do anything for you. And you need 2 cups of coffee or a bigger cup of coffee or whatnot, right? It's not any different in a way with our bodies, right? When we fall in love or infatuation with someone, we release a lot of norepinephrine and adrenaline, of dopamine, serotonin, phenylethylamine or PEA, oxytocin and endorphins. All of these things are coursing through our system when we start to become infatuated with someone. And again, somewhere around like the 3 to 7 month mark, they really drastically fall off. And that's when a lot of couples will have their first fights and break up. There are things you can do to increase these as well. But they do tend to play a pretty prominent role. I have a little video that talks about these. I think it's really helpful. Let me play it for you. This person is an expert in the field of like the chemistry of love. Really interesting individual. Let me find it. Here we go. Really all throughout a relationship. So norepinephrine, which is a neurotransmitter, the equivalent would be adrenaline as like a hormone, but norepinephrine plays a big role in like that sweating, like your palms getting sweaty when you're nervous or like on a date with somebody or kind of like engaging with somebody in that way, your heart pounding, you're getting like a dry mouth feeling, butterflies in the stomach. I want to talk more about that just for a minute. I'll come right back to this. But butterflies in the stomach is a really kind of interesting one. It's a very fluttery feeling in your stomach, which is why we call it butterflies in the stomach. Well, what it actually is, it kind of takes the romance away from it a little bit here. What it is it is your like your intestines pulling away as all of the blood is rerouted somewhere else. So as although the blood is being rerouted from your intestines to gear up to fight off a stressor or like face an emotion, you get that kind of fluttery feeling. It's a very sympathetic nervous system response related to fight or flight. It has to do with a lot of different hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, and then neurotransmitters like norepinephrine. But as everything pulls away to reroute that blood flow to give you the energy to fight something off, you get that fluttery feeling, right? So butterflies in the stomach is actually you preparing to face a threat or a stressor, and that's where that fluttery feeling comes from. Right? Kind of takes, like I said, the romance away from it a little bit, but that's what that feeling is in your body, why it kind of gives you that tingly kind of feeling. Dopamine, very, very common neurotransmitter, right? This one plays a big role in like your focused attention on something, right? So dopamine, when it's coursing through your system, plays a big role in things like desire and pleasure. Your brain's reward circuit is very much linked to dopamine. So you get feelings of like euphoria. You can't sleep because that person's on your mind, right? Like they're all you like are kind of focused on, right? It has a lot to do with focused attention, like she said in the video. Serotonin plays a big role in craving and obsession. When you first meet someone and you're infatuated with them, you are obsessed with them. You crave them. You want to be near them, right? It's all you can think about. That's all you want to do is be with that person. You're obsessed, right? That has to do a lot with serotonin. Phenylethylamine is an interesting one. It's actually found in some foods like chocolate. It's the basis for things like aphrodisiacs, which we'll talk about in a later chapter. But it's more like a kind of a master thing that's kind of playing a part in everything. Oxytocin is the cuddle hormone. When you hold hands with someone or physically touch them or engage in any kind of physical intimacy, oxytocin is released in your system, and it causes you to want to be closer to that person, along with endorphins, which are our body's like natural like high and painkillers. So what happens is all of these things are just so prevalent right off the bat. And you feel those feelings of love and lust and infatuation, and then they fall off. Right now, you can find ways to bring these back, and you have to find ways to like get little bursts of these. One really great thing you can do is anything that's almost like mildly scary. Roller coasters are a great example of that. You get that rush of like adrenaline and fear when you're on a roller coaster, or a scary movie where you get those little jump scares. So like on a first date, if you want to really ramp these things up, take them to something that's mildly scary. Only if they like scary. If they don't, it's not going to help you, right? But like going to like horror nights or like Not Scary Farm or something like that, where you get all these like jump scares and there's a little bit of fear. that fun fear like that, or like with roller coasters or scary movies, can sometimes cause these things to kind of get pushed up a little bit. And so sometimes people will do stuff like that to kind of bring these feelings back or enhance them on a date, just so they can cause some of this to surge when it might have kind of depleted over time. Which is why people do things like go out on dates or do role plays or do like creative things to find ways to kind of get some of this stuff back, because it does taper over time, and that's normal. You have to find a way to then move to that companionate love in order to keep that relationship going. Now, I have a little activity I want to do with this, but rather than give it to you as homework, I'm going to have us do it next time, just rather than give you homework, because I think homework is me. So what I want to do is we'll stop here. I have some expert welcomes here again with that caveat. And then when I see you on Monday, we'll keep going with this. We'll do a little activity with a song to kind of review, and then we'll keep going. So have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you all on Monday. Do it.